In the red dust of a brick kiln, I died to set them free. This story gives me hope, teaches survival, and starts deep conversations. Watch my summary now, then read this powerful book yourself.
The moon that night, it wasn't just a sliver.
No.
It wasn't hiding behind clouds or anything. It was this massive, oversized golden thing just hanging completely low in the sky.
Almost mocking.
Exactly, mocking. Because of how much light it was throwing down onto the dirt, you could see everything. Every single horrifying detail, completely stripped of any of the mercy that the dark usually gives you.
Yeah, and the air. We have to talk about the air. It's so heavy, you know? So completely still that the sounds don't even echo.
Right, they don't bounce off anything.
They just drop like dead weight, like stones hitting the dust. And you hear the dogs first.
Oh, God, the dogs.
That heavy, panicked panting. The sound of these massive animals, the metallic clinking as they strain against their tether chains, physically pulling the men forward out of the dark.
And then you hear it.
Yeah.
The specific sound that is going to live inside a 7-year-old boy's nightmares for literally the rest of his life.
Just this agonizing rhythm.
Thud.
Thud.
Right.
Heavy wooden cricket bats, just breaking flesh, breaking bone.
And you can almost smell it, right? The metallic tang of blood mixing with that dry, red dirt.
The dust.
Yeah, the dust. And right there, right in the middle of that golden, mocking light, a man named Tari he pauses.
This part always gets me.
It's sickening. He stops swinging the bat for just a fraction of a second. He looks down at his shoe. He sees this splash of blood on it. And he reaches down to pick up a piece of torn fabric from the ground.
Not just any fabric, though.
No, it's a mother's dupatta.
Right.
Her honor, her modesty. And he casually uses it to wipe the blood off his shoe like it's a rag.
Right.
Before just dropping it back into the dirt.
I mean, it is an image of complete systemic annihilation. It totally suffocates you right from the jump.
It really does. It pulls you right by the throat.
Right by the throat, directly into the heart of Aisha Hassan's When the Fireflies Dance. And that is exactly what we are analyzing for you today on this deep dive.
We are getting way, way into it.
Yeah, because we are looking at a text that operates as this really intense social realist literary thriller. It uses the mechanics of a heist, the paranoia of blackmail, the pure adrenaline of a getaway.
All those classic thriller tropes.
Exactly. But it uses them to expose this grinding, completely inescapable horror, which is the reality of bonded labor in Pakistan.
Which is it's a nightmare. We are basically dissecting the anatomy of a sacrifice today.
You really are.
We're following Lallu, that 7-year-old boy who watched his brother Jugnu get beaten to death in that dirt.
Right.
Who was then, sent away by his parents to survive in the city.
We watch him grow up.
Yeah, we watch him grow up completely fixated on one singular impossible goal, buying his family's freedom from the brick kiln. But I think what we really need to interrogate today is the actual nature of Lallu's actions.
See, this is where we're going to clash.
I know we are.
Yeah.
Because the text frames him as this savior, right?
Uh-huh.
But if you step back, his choices are just breathtakingly reckless.
Reckless. How can you call it reckless? He is driven by pure, absolute, desperate love.
But the execution.
He's trapped. He is trapped in a system that is literally built from the ground up to crush him and his family into the mud. You cannot judge a man who is suffocating in a vacuum for, thrashing around trying to find air.
Okay, but look at the fallout. Just look at the actual fallout of what he does. He initiates a heist against a vastly more powerful, violent man.
Out of necessity.
He risks the life of an innocent bystander to do it. And his ultimate solution, faking his death by carving out his own organ, that is horrifyingly impractical.
Impractical, maybe, but...
It is an act of total self-destruction that is just disguised as heroism. We really have to separate his emotional intent, which I get, from the catastrophic mechanics of how he actually tries to pull this off.
Well, see, I completely disagree. Because in a world where the law is it's just a weapon of the rich, right? You use whatever tools are available to you, no matter how much they cost.
Even if the cost is your own body.
Yes. Because to understand his desperation, you have to look at the environment he's fighting against. For you listening, we really have to establish the body. The brick kiln.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about the body.
Because it is not just a setting in this book. Hassan doesn't just use it as a backdrop. It is a malignant, breathing character. It's the architecture of hell.
That's the perfect way to describe it, because
Hmm.
Hassan spends an immense amount of time, like pages and pages, just establishing the sensory reality of this
There's
place.
dirt.
Right. There isn't just regular dirt. It's this fine, loamy, incredibly red dust. She calls it a permanent red gash in the landscape.
It's a wound.
It is. And she describes it settling on Lallu, quote, like a weariness. It coats his cheap sandals. It creeps up his white clothes.
It gets into the pores.
It gets into the lungs. It smells of raw earth and cheap engine oil and sweat. It's inescapable.
And looming over all of this red dust, all of this suffocating heat, is the chimney. Yeah, 100 feet tall. Always, always billowing this thick, toxic black smoke. And there's this chilling moment when Lallu returns to the body as a young man, and Hassan writes that he can actually feel the chimney's evil eye watching him.
Like it knows he doesn't belong there anymore.
Exactly. The one who got away. The chimney actually whispers to him in his mind, says, "You will come back."
Ugh. Gives me chills.
It is a psychological panopticon. It dictates the entire horizon. You can't look anywhere without seeing it.
And the psychological weight of that environment is just absolute entrapment. Because even the sky above Lahore is complicit in this.
Oh, the smog.
Yeah, Hassan describes the winter smog as a gray dupatta covering the sun. So think about that imagery. You have the red dust below you grabbing your feet.
Yeah.
And you have the gray smog above you, completely trapping the heat, trapping the misery, blocking out the
He
light.
put a lid on a jar.
Exactly. And everywhere you look, row upon row upon row of these red bricks.
Yeah.
Just unbaked clay waiting for the fire.
Yeah.
And I mean, we really have to think about the physical texture of those bricks for a second.
Right, because they aren't machine made.
No. Every single one of those red blocks is etched with the literal fingerprints of Lallu's family.
His mother, his father, his sisters, they are out there spending 14, 15 hours a day just squatting in the dirt under that sun, physically pressing wet clay into these wooden molds.
By hand.
By hand. Their physical bodies are literally eroding to create the building blocks of a city that they are legally forbidden to inhabit.
It's insane. How does an environment that is designed to build a city simultaneously erase the very people who are building it?
It's a paradox of extreme capitalism. Every brick that goes into constructing like a luxury home in Lahore is quite literally made of their sweat, their skin, their erased futures.
Their futures? That's
Oh.
exactly. It is the physical manifestation of stolen time.
And to understand the sheer terrifying scale of that stolen time, I think we need to step back from the narrative for a minute.
Yeah, let's pull back.
We need to examine the factual context that the author provides in the author's note at the beginning of the book.
Because this isn't fantasy.
No, this nightmare landscape isn't an invention of fiction at all. And obviously, we're just impartially reporting the statistics provided in the source material here to frame the setting, but the numbers she presents are staggering.
They really are.
The author outlines an estimated 4.5 million people living in these exact slave-like conditions across roughly 20,000 brick kilns in the country.
4.5 million people. And the part that just completely broke me of those 4.5 million, 1 million are children.
1 million kids.
1 million children who were born directly into that red dust, who will never know anything else.
And the mechanism that sustains those numbers, the thing that keeps them trapped there generation after generation, is critical for you to understand if you want to grasp Lallu's world. It is something called the Peshgi.
Right, the advanced law.
Right. But it's not just a loan, you know? It's a trap, a mathematical trap.
Can you walk us through how that actually works on the ground?
Yeah, so a family takes a really small sum of money from the kiln owner for an unavoidable emergency. Maybe they need basic antibiotics or fertilizer for a tiny plot of land.
Something they need to survive.
Exactly. But the interest rates on this Peshgi are exorbitant. They are fundamentally unpayable. And simultaneously, the wages they earn from making the bricks are deliberately suppressed well below the actual threshold of survival.
So they can't even afford food.
Right. So the family has to borrow more money from the owner just to eat while they work to pay off the first loan.
It's a doom loop.
It's a total doom loop. The debt compounds daily, the kiln managers doctor the ledgers, and it becomes a generational inheritance. When a father dies, that debt doesn't go away. It immediately passes to the son, or the wife.
Or the 7-year-old child.
Exactly. It is a system mathematically designed from the start to be impossible to repay. Those numbers, that Peshgi, that forms the absolute inescapable gravity of Lallu's entire world.
And you see the psychological toll of that inescapable gravity most clearly in Ami. Lallu's mother.
Oh, her arc is just devastating.
It really is.
Oh.
Because we are given this glimpse of her early on in a flashback, right? Back when Lallu was like 6 years old, before the Peshgi dragged them to the body.
When they still had a little farm?
Yeah. She was so vibrant. She was loud. She was this fierce presence. She used to scold the boys for jumping in sewers. She scrubbed them down with hot water. She was so incredibly protective and alive.
And then you cut to 14 years later in the body.
Yeah.
She has developed complete selective mutism.
She doesn't speak at all. She just rocks.
There's that scene where Lallu walks into their windowless mud hut, right? And it takes his eyes a minute to adjust to the dark.
And he hears that sound again.
Yeah.
Thud, thud, thud. But this time, it isn't cricket bats. It's Ami. She's crouched on her haunches on the dirt floor, rocking back and forth, hitting her own head against the mud wall.
Just steadily striking the wall. It is a profound self-imposed exile from reality.
She just checked out.
Because it's the only psychological defense mechanism she has left in her arsenal. She has retreated totally inward because the external world took her eldest son, Jugnu, and then forced her to send her youngest son, Lallu, away to the city just to keep him from being murdered too.
Hassan describes her as a skinny blackbird.
Yes, hopping about.
Wary, brittle, like any sudden movement might shatter her. The system hasn't just stolen her physical labor and her fingerprints, it has violently extracted her voice. Her silence is literally a monument to what the kiln destroys.
And that silence, Ami's silence, forces Lallu to carry the entire narrative alone. He has no one to talk to about this, and he is carrying it beneath this just crushing, suffocating layer of survivor's guilt.
Which is the core of his whole psychology. And the origin of that guilt stems from a very specific childhood memory. The story of the Kalabud.
The little black monster.
Right. This happens when he's 6 years old. He's following Jugnu through the fields near their old home, and they come across this 3-foot wide open sewer.
It's basically industrial runoff.
Yeah, it is filled with this stagnant, frothing black sludge, chemical waste from the factories, rotting animal carcasses, just vile.
And Jugnu, who is older and stronger, he easily bounds right over it.
But Lallu tries to follow him, fails, and falls entirely into this viscous, putrid black mire. He is completely submerged, swallowing it, choking on this toxic sludge.
And Jugnu turns back, and without even hesitating, he reaches down into that absolute filth and drags his little brother up to the dry bank.
And the beautiful thing is, Jugnu doesn't mock him.
No, he protects him.
He actually defects their mother's anger when they get home covered in slime. He tells Ami that Lallu's actually a superhero who just went into a phone booth and came out in disguise as the Kalabud.
It's such a tender, brotherly moment.
It is. Jugnu wasn't just an older brother to him. He was an absolute mythological protector in Lallu's eyes. Jugnu could do no wrong.
And Hassan uses a very specific fleeting symbol to represent Jugnu throughout the entire text. It's in the title, the Fireflies, the Jugnu.
Because that's literally what his name means in Urdu, right?
Exactly. Jugnu means firefly. And there's this incredibly vital scene early on where the two brothers are sitting in the dark and these tiny bioluminescent insects just surround them.
Floating in the dark.
Yeah, and Lallu manages to catch one in his little hands. He wants to keep it. He wants to put it in a jar, but Jugnu tells him he has to let it go. He says, it needs to be with the other fireflies in the sky.
Because you can't trap light.
Exactly. The firefly is fragile. It provides a tiny, brilliant spark of hope in overwhelming darkness, but it cannot be contained. It literally cannot survive in captivity.
And Jugnu was the firefly of the Bhati.
He was.
He was the one who finally stood up. He gathered the kiln workers in the dark, under the weak light of this single flickering gas lamp, and told them that what was happening to them, their exploitation, was illegal.
He educated them.
Right. He told them they were bleeding and dying to build a city they weren't even allowed to live in. And because he shone that light, because he tried to organize a labor strike, the system crushed him.
And this right here is where Lallu's psychology fractures irrecoverably. Because the night the men came with the dogs to kill him, Jugnu actually knew they were coming.
He had a warning.
He had packed a small canvas bag. He had stolen his parents' meager stash of hidden money. He was going to run away into the night.
He was going to escape.
But Lallu, who was 7 years old, was terrified of being left behind in that hell without his protector. So Lallu grabbed the bag.
Oh, this scene breaks me.
He grabbed the bag and he begged Jugnu to stay. He threw a complete physical tantrum in the dirt.
And he delayed him.
He delayed him just long enough for the dogs to catch his scent. Because he stayed to calm Lallu down, Jugnu was beaten to death.
So Lallu carries the unbearable weight of knowing that his childhood selfishness, his clinging, was the direct catalyst for his protector's murder.
He replays it every single day, every hour. If only he had let the Firefly go.
If he had just pushed the bag into Jugnu's hands and told him to run.
Right. It's a guilt that entirely consumes him, and it dictates this pathological, obsessive need to save the rest of his family. He has to balance the ledger.
Which is what makes his current reality, when he's grown up and working as a driver for the wealthy Alum family in the city, so deeply nauseating.
The contrast is jarring.
It gives you whiplash. You have the red dust and the suffocating smog and the misery of the body, and then you just transition seamlessly to the Alum's cantonment estate in Lahore.
It's this oasis of artificial, completely insulated wealth.
Yeah, Hassan describes these sprinklers that are constantly 24/7 watering these lush, dazzling green lawns, even in the absolute driest peak of summer heat.
They have a monkey puzzle tree.
Right, a tree that isn't even native, and it has its own custom green awning just to shade it from the sun.
They have so much water, so much ridiculous excess that they are watering decorative grass while Lallu's younger sister is literally dehydrating in the clay pits just a few miles down the road.
The spatial geography of Lahore in this novel is brilliantly designed to highlight that moral decay, the proximity of the extreme wealth to the extreme poverty.
And we must look closely at Omer to really understand this. He is the patriarch of the house.
Lallu's boss.
Right. A wealthy businessman who operates with absolute, unchecked impunity in the city. And the sickening twist, the knot at the very center of this narrative is the revelation of who Omer actually is.
When Lallu finds the papers.
Yes, because for years, Lallu drives this man around. He cleans his luxury black cars. He watches him casually hand over these thick stacks of banknotes to his daughter, Yasmin, just so she can buy designer handbags.
Pocket change for him.
Exactly. And then one night, Lallu is cleaning the study, and he discovers ownership papers in Omer's desk. Omer Alam owns Bhati 316.
It's a gut punch.
He owns the exact kiln where Lallu's family is currently trapped.
Which completely recontextualizes the entire novel up to that point. It recontextualizes the night of the murder.
Yep.
Because Lallu suddenly remembers, the text flashes back, he remembers a long, sleek black car parked at the edge of the kiln while Jugnu was being beaten.
Idling in the dark.
The man inside that car just watched the dogs tear at Jugnu, watched the bats breaking his brother's legs, and then he just casually rolled up the tinted window and drove away into the night.
That was Omer.
He ordered the execution. He ordered it to stop a labor revolt from threatening his profit margins. Jugnu was a line item to him.
And consider what Omer's massive, luxurious house is actually built from.
Deep red bricks.
The thematic repetition is unavoidable here. You can't miss it. The very walls that protect Omer, the walls of his beautiful, air-conditioned sanctuary, are literally baked with the blood of Lallu's brother.
They carry the literal fingerprints of Lallu's mother on the inside of the plaster.
It is a manifestation of class parasitism. The elite in this world, they atrophy morally because they are completely physically insulated from the violence that sustains their lifestyle. Omer doesn't have to swing the bat, he just signs the check.
And this realization is the pivot point of the narrative. Right here. This is where Hassan abruptly shifts the novel from a slow, oppressive, atmospheric social critique.
Which she established so well.
Right, into a high-stakes, breathless thriller. Because Lallu finally realizes that playing by the rules, quietly saving his meager driver's salary rupee by rupee, is never ever going to save his family.
The Peshgi is mathematically designed to outpace his savings.
Exactly. She has to step outside the law.
Because the law protects Omer Alam. The law is on Omer's payroll. And the transition and pacing here is just brilliant. We move aggressively into the mechanics of a heist, and it actually starts with a betrayal inside the Alam household itself.
With Asma, Omer's wife.
Right. Asima hires Lallu in secret to spy on Omer because she suspects he's having an affair. And Lallu does it. He manages to follow him, and he gets photographic evidence of Omer sleeping with Yasmin's best friend, Tanya.
Which is a massive scandal.
Huge. But when Lallu asks Asima for the money, she explicitly promised him money that he desperately, urgently needs because the kiln manager is threatening to force his younger sister into the mud pits. Asima doesn't just refuse to pay him.
She sets him up.
She sets him up. She panics, and she plants a stolen luxury watch in Lallu's bag to frame him as a common thief so his word means nothing.
And Omer beats him savagely for the perceived theft. He doesn't even know about the photos Lallu has in his pocket. He just beats him for the wad.
And fires him.
Fired, beaten, thrown into the street, and threatened with the police. Lallu is stripped of his dignity and his only source of income. He has absolutely nothing left to lose.
So he pivots.
He uses those photos to blackmail Omer directly. He demands a massive, life-changing sum of cash in exchange for the negatives. And when the drop goes wrong, because of course it goes wrong, Lallu essentially robs Omer of the briefcase in broad daylight.
Okay, we have to spend some time here unpacking the metaphor of the Dozra.
Oh, the cricket bowl. Yeah.
Because it is the central operating metaphor for Lallu's entire strategy during this heist phase.
Explain the Dozra for people who don't know cricket.
So back when Lallu was 7, the day before Jugnu died, Jugnu bought him a real red leather cricket ball, a huge extravagance, and Lallu bowled Jugnu out with it. He used a highly specialized spin ball called a Dozra.
Right.
Now, in cricket, an off-spin delivery naturally turns from the offside to the leg side.
Right.
The batsman reads the bowler's wrist, sees the grip, and fully expects the ball to break inward toward him.
Physics dictates that it should break inward.
Exactly. But the Dozra, which translates to the other one, the bowler uses the exact same wrist action, the exact same aggressive run-up, but the ball spins the entirely opposite way. It breaks outward.
It goes away from the batsman.
Yes. It is a delivery built entirely, 100% on deception. The batsman commits his entire body to a reality that simply isn't there.
And that's exactly what Lallu plays against Omer Alam. He plays the Dozra.
He absolutely does.
He approaches Omer as this submissive, beaten, uneducated, disposable servant. He looks like he is breaking one way, right? Fleeing, hiding, totally terrified of the police and Omer's immense power.
But he spins the other way.
He strikes at Omer's most vulnerable point, his carefully cultivated public reputation and his relationship with his daughter. Lallu uses his perceived invisibility as a servant to orchestrate a heist right under Omer's nose.
Okay, but see, this is exactly where I have to challenge your framing of these events.
Here we go.
You call it a masterful Dozra. I call it an act of sheer, unadulterated recklessness that almost gets people killed. Let's really examine the actual morality of this heist.
Okay, let's examine it.
Lallu decides to steal from a man who has armed guards at his gate, who commands the local police force, who has a documented history of ordering brutal executions without a second thought. And what actually happens?
He gets the money.
Omer's men track Lallu down. They ambush him. They shoot at him while he's driving in a torrential monsoon rainstorm, and who is sitting in the passenger seat of the car with him when the bullets start flying? Yasmin, Omer's own daughter.
But wait, he was just giving her a ride. She was stranded in the storm on the side of the road, completely unaware of the blackmail. He wasn't kidnapping her. He was trying to protect her from the storm.
He knew he had a target on his back. He had a briefcase full of extorted cash in the trunk. By letting Yasmin into that car, he'd subjected her to the violence of her own father's goons.
They didn't know she was in there.
It doesn't matter. The car crashes. It rolls over. Yasmin is permanently paralyzed. She will never walk again for the rest of her life. Lallu is severely injured. So I have to ask you, was it actually quote-unquote heroic to steal that money? Or was it the desperate thrashing of a man who totally refused to think through the consequences of taking on a criminal syndicate?
You can't put Yasmin's paralysis on him.
His theft directly destroys the life of the one person in the Alam household who actually treated him with a shred of humanity. Yasmin was kind to him.
You are holding Lallu to an absolutely impossible standard of moral purity in a system that is inherently psychopathic.
I'm just looking at the collateral damage.
But look at his choices. Lallu didn't shoot Yasmin. Omer's thugs pulled the trigger. Lallu was forced into the corner where doing nothing meant death anyway. Think about his family in the body. His father is actively dying of a respiratory illness from breathing that black kiln smoke for 3 decades. He's coughing up blood. His younger sister is literally days away from being forced into the mud pits to make up the family's daily brick quota because the father is too weak.
I acknowledge the desperation, but...
And the kiln manager, Hira, is actively threatening his family with physical violence if they don't produce. In a system where the police are literally just a private security force for the rich, where the law is in bed with the politicians who own these bodies, what other choice did he really have?
He could have.
He chose to fight back with the only tools available to him: deception and theft. He spun the ball the other way because the straight bowl was a guaranteed strikeout.
But look at the cost of that spin. We have to look at the hospital ward sequence.
Okay, let's look at it.
While Lou wakes up after the crash, his leg is completely shattered.
No.
He has only a fraction of the blackmail money left because the rest of the cash literally blew away in the wind and the rain during the wreckage.
Right.
He is trapped in a public hospital bed, immobilized, and he overhears Omer Alam standing right outside in the hallway, casually telling his henchmen to finish Lallu off the second he is officially discharged from the ward.
He is a dead man walking.
Literally. Omer's reach is absolute. The police standing guard outside his room won't help him. They work for Omer. So Alali has to engineer his own ghost.
He has to disappear.
He makes a deal with Sister Billow. And we have to talk about Sister Billow. She is this corrupt, pain-chewing nurse who operates entirely in the hospital's underbelly, motivated by nothing but greed.
The atmosphere of that hospital ward is viscerally terrifying. I mean, Hassan doesn't spare us any details here.
It's so claustrophobic.
It is. The oppressive humidity. The groans of 50 injured patients packed into a single, poorly ventilated room. The smell of cheap medicinal disinfectant completely failing to mask the scent of sweat and decay.
And the sound.
Yeah.
The sound of Sister Billow's heels.
That specific sound of her heels approaching Lallu's rested bed frame in the middle of the night. Clack, clack.
It echoes the thud of the bats.
Exactly. It's the sound of an executioner, but she is simultaneously his only savior. It's terrifying.
And the deal they strike is the ultimate horrifying distillation of bonded labor.
It really is.
Because Lallu cannot just fake his death on paper. He cannot just pay Billow a bribe to forge a death certificate and wheel him out the back door in the dark.
No, she wants more.
She demands half of the remaining stolen cash he managed to save from the crash, and she demands something else. To make the medical records look completely authentic, to secure the unquestioning cooperation of the corrupt doctor on duty. Lallu has to pay with his own flesh.
A kidney for a life.
He must undergo an unnecessary, brutal surgery in a subterranean basement of the hospital to have his organ harvested and sold on the black market.
God, the description of that surgery.
The text describes the aftermath so starkly. The, quote, ugly, vivid scar that ran halfway across his hip. He sells a literal piece of his internal anatomy to buy his family's freedom.
It's the only currency he has left that Omer Alam can't touch.
But there is a horrifying irony here that we cannot ignore, especially given our earlier debate. We spent all this time analyzing the body, right? The brick kiln takes a body slowly. It extracts labor, sweat, and breath over generations, grinding bone into red dust over decades. But Sister Billow and the corrupt medical system, they take a kidney all at once.
It's all night.
It is a brutally impractical transaction. He is permanently crippling himself. He will carry the physical weakness, the compromised immunity, for the rest of his life. How is this a victory? It's a tragic, necessary mutilation.
It is the ultimate Dozra.
It's a mutilation.
But think about the psychology of faking one's death. Think about the sheer unadulterated terror of lying on that cold metal operating table in the basement.
Trusting them.
The blinding bright surgical lights. Looking up at a corrupt doctor whose name you don't even know. Trusting a nurse who is only in it for the cash. It was actually stopping Billow from just letting him bleed out on the table and taking all the cash anyway.
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
It's nothing. But he does it. He lets them cut him open. He erases himself. He spins away from the universe. He accepts the permanent role of a ghost so that his parents and his sisters can live. If that isn't heroism, what is?
Well, let's trace the mechanics of this ghost then. Let's look at the escape from Lahore.
Okay.
Because Lallu, fresh out of this back alley organ harvesting surgery, is crippled. Agonizing pain is radiating from his hip and his shattered leg, but he finally meets his family in secret. And they have to flee to the train station in heavy black burqas to completely obscure their identities.
Can you just imagine the claustrophobia of that sequence? It's sweltering.
Yeah.
The burqas smell of old mothballs and stagnant air.
You can barely breathe through the fabric.
Right. And Lallu is sweating profusely. He's fighting off an infection from the basement surgery, trying to manage his crutches under this heavy shroud.
Stumbling along the platform.
And he is trying to keep his voice pitched up so he sounds like an elderly woman, terrified that Omer's men are watching the platforms for a limping man. The tension is just unbearable. You are reading it and holding your breath.
And then the monsoon breaks.
The rain.
The rain just hammers down on Lahore. And it's this immense sensory relief in the text. The water washes away the red dust of the body that has coated their skin and their lungs for 14 years.
It washes it down the storm drains.
It cools the suffocating heat of the burqas. It is a physical and spiritual baptism as they board that train.
And on that train ride, as the rhythmic clatter of the tracks pulls them further and further away from the architecture of hell, we get a confession that completely shifts Lallu's internal landscape.
Finally.
Right. Abu, his father, finally tells him the truth about the night Jugnu died.
Because all his life, Lallu believed Hira's justification for the murder.
The kiln manager's lie.
Right. He believed that Jugnu had actually murdered the mad boy, Hasnad, by drowning him in the river. It was the narrative the kiln owners used to justify the brutal public execution to the other workers. We are punishing a murderer.
But Abu reveals on the train that Hasnat, who, by the way, was kept chained to a wall in the kiln like an animal because of his mental illness, Hasnat deliberately walked into the river to escape being sent back to the mud pits.
It was suicide.
Yes. Jugnu didn't drown him. Jugnu tried to save him. Jugnu was devastated by Hasnat's death. Hira just used the drowning as a highly convenient excuse to publicly execute Jugnu, to crush the labor revolt before it gained any momentum.
He weaponized a tragedy.
Jugnu wasn't a murderer at all. He was just a scapegoat.
And the profound release of guilt that Lallu feels in that moment on the train is staggering.
You can feel an exhale.
The weight he's carried since he was 7 years old, the belief that his tantrum caused the death of a murderer begins to lift. Jugnu died a martyr, not a criminal.
Which brings them, finally, to Karachi.
A completely different sensory world.
Total opposite of Lahore. It's not the red dust and the green lawns. It's gray, salty concrete.
The smell of the ocean.
Yeah, the relentless, anonymous hustle of 20 million people. A place where a family can actually disappear into the crowd.
But this is where we have to confront the ending. And I know you see this as a triumph, but I look at their arrival in Karachi and I see a tragedy of permanent losses.
How can you see it as a tragedy? They made it.
Yes, they escaped the kiln, but look at the staggering cost. Abu dies shortly after they arrive.
He was already dying.
But he dies. He finally tastes freedom. He breathes air free of brick smoke for the first time in his life, and then his compromised lungs simply give out. And Lallu is heavily scarred, missing an organ, walking with a permanent limp, forever looking over his shoulder.
But it is a triumph. Look at what he achieved against absolutely impossible odds. Shabnam, his sister, who was destined to make bricks until her hands bled, is enrolling in a college in Karachi.
Grant you that.
Pinky, the youngest, is laughing, running around their small apartment with a bowl of gajar halwa. And Ami, who was completely mute, rocking against a mud wall, is speaking again.
Her voice comes back?
She is healing. They're out of the mud. Lallu achieved the impossible. He broke a generational curse that was designed to never be broken.
Survival is not the same as a happy ending, though. Lallu has permanently severed ties with the two people who anchored his soul in Lahore. He had to leave Fatima behind, the woman he loved.
That was hard.
He let her believe he is either a violent criminal on the run or rotting in a ditch somewhere. And he had to completely abandon Salman.
Salman was his loyal best friend.
The only person who really had his back in the city?
Yeah, the kid who shared those overripe stolen mangoes with him in the dirt when they had absolutely nothing. The kid who gave him a key to his shop to sleep in when Lallu was homeless.
And Lallu repays him by disappearing. Although he does send Salman a cryptic letter from Karachi, promising to one day return and reveal the truth when it is, quote, safe.
Right, he writes, maybe in a few years, when enough time has passed, I'll find you a successful businessman with a whole chain of shops, and we'll catch a movie like we used to and go for Golgappa afterwards.
It is a heartbreaking fantasy.
Why is it a fantasy, though? Why can't he go back once Omer Alam loses power or just forgets about him? Why can't he just resume his life later?
Because of the very nature of the sacrifice. We've taken you, the listener, from the suffocating red dust of Lahore through the sterile, terrifying corridors of a corrupt hospital, all the way to the salty gray anonymity of Karachi. We've watched a boy surrender his body and his identity to buy his family's lives.
Right.
And as you sit wherever you are right now listening to this, I really want you to consider the weight of the invisible labor around you.
Yeah. Look around your room.
What invisible hands baked the bricks that built the walls you're sitting inside right now? What systemic violence is entirely insulated by your daily comfort?
It really changes how you look at a building. It changes how you look at a simple red brick. You can't unsee the fingerprints once you know they're there.
You really can't. And I want to leave you with one last chilling thought to mull over regarding Lily's promise to his friend Salman. Yeah. Lallu believes he can just hit pause on his life, become a ghost to save his family, and then one day simply step back into the world of the living as if nothing happened. But if a man sacrifices his identity, surrenders his past, and pays with his own flesh to become a ghost, can a ghost ever truly safely return to the world of the living, or does the disguise eventually permanently become the man?